everything you're looking at along the tables, the rough, the specimens you see here, the lovely gemstones, and there's more over there around the corner, all have come from one part of the world. So it's all Boulder opal, and it only occurs in Australia and in a certain region in Australia called Queensland. I put a book together, my wife put this book together in fact, and this is the story of Broken River mining. And we have 4 shows we're doing here in Tucson this year. So the rough that you see here is only available at Kino show, and we're 10:32. And then we're going to do shows, or we're doing a show at Pueblo at the moment, where the higher grade gemstones are. So we have some gemstones here, but the higher grade is going to be there. And then we do GJX show next week, and then we're going to do the TGMS as well. So all your high grade gemstones will be down at Pueblo show, GJX, or the TGMS show at the end. But let me tell you a little story. And this story starts in Australia. So this story here starts, these are our 2 mines that everything you see at these shows have come from. We don't buy in, everything is our material, we cut it, we process it. So I live in just west of Brisbane. Our 2 mines are out in the Errolmanga and Yarraga fields. They're 200 miles apart and about 800 miles to get to them from where I live. The dark shaded area you see here on the map is called the Winton Formation. Our mines lay on the western edge of the Winton Formation, the dark area, and that is the only place in the world that you get the famous Boulder opal. And this year, for the first time, we brought to the show what we call wood replacement, and I'll talk about that in a minute, because that is very rare, unique. So the big shaded, or the lighter shaded area, you probably won't pick it up, but this area here was all once upon a time an inland sea in Australia. So all of Australian opal, whether it come from Cooper Pedy, Anamuka, Lightning Ridge, is all sedimentary. So Australian opal is all sedimentary opal. Pretty much all the other opal in the world is volcanic, and a lot of it's hydroplane. A lot of Ethiopian opal is hydroplane, which means it's not quite as stable as sedimentary opal.
Is it like the Mexican fire opal?
It all has some form of volcanic origin. It's not sedimentary. Bearing in mind that Australia probably puts about 90% of the opal onto the world market, and it's all sedimentary. But just beware, well, not fair, but buy, if you like it, you buy it. I'm not saying don't buy it, I'm just saying know what you're buying. So very quickly, I just want to run through. The flat top mesa you see here is part of what was once the inland sea, and that's the floor of the inland sea. And in the Boulder field, because we're a long way from Lake Eyre, where all this sediment runs, we're a couple of thousand miles away, erosion has taken all this away. And the opal is only found up here around about 25 yards or so below what now is the inland sea floor. Getting much higher once upon a time, but now about 25 yards. And for these guys back at Lightning Ridge and Cooper Pedy, further down, because this is Lake Eyre down here, we're talking up here, they drilled down through that hard cap rock, the floor of the inland sea, and then they tunnel out. And they're getting a seam opal, which is usually a little bit easier to handle up the ladder, right? In our case, our boulders are quite large, and we use machinery, which allows us to mine here. So just flicking through very quickly, Boulder opal also has a black opal, like Lightning Ridge, the famous black opal from Lightning Ridge. The difference is the Boulder black opal forms with a manganese layer under or between it and the ironstone. Lightning Ridge has a black opal. Now that's a black opal. We have our larger specimens because this is the size of the boulders. They're quite large. This is the opal that is in the veins in the boulder. So, explaining very, very quickly how the boulder forms. So the boulder, this is a boulder. Once upon a time, would have been very much egg-shaped. This boulder started its life as a piece of organic matter. Remember that it's all sedimentary, so we had rivers and streams flowing into this written formation area. Coming with the water flow was some form of organic matter. That organic matter settled in the mud down in the bottom of the river. And the carbon that was in that piece of organic matter started attracting the particles from the soil around it, growing into a mud ball, growing larger and larger, and anything from size like this to something 200-300 pounds. To start with a boulder like that one, you can see it was a very large boulder. So you can see the beginning of time for this guy. Whatever it was, looks like a seed pod, something else perhaps. And you can see as it grew larger and larger, attracting the particles growing into a mud ball. And then at some point, the mud ball down in the river dried up, the mud ball dried out, shrinkage cracks occurred. You can see the shrinkage cracks running around here. And the opal is a fluid. The reason I know it's a fluid is, if you can see this, there's a fluid level in that boulder. Ran into this boulder, seeping down through it over time. And if you look, you can see the opal in the boulder. So that's pretty much the story of a boulder opal. Give or take 65 million years ago. Now, what we have very different this year that we found in one of our mines is we have what's called a wood replacement. Some people call it pipe opal. Has a few different names, but basically it is. So what we're looking at here is around about 10 feet lower than where we're finding the boulder level in one of our mines. We're finding what we call a wood replacement. And what it is once again, going back to sedimentary, the flow of the rivers and streams coming in, brought with it sediment, and in that sediment was some form of vegetation, a bush, a plant, not sure what it was, doesn't really matter much. It settled down in the mud, down in the bottom of the river. Over time, the mud formed into the sandstone you see there, and the plant decayed away. And when it decayed away, it left a void. And that void now is filled with precious opal. The same opal that came into the boulders has came into this area where that void was. It has filled that void so perfectly, or the mold was so perfect. If you look closely just behind the polished area, you can still see the striations of the bark, the plant, the bark on the plant, the lines, the bark, the striations. And we find that when we find it, not always do we find it in big pieces like that. We unfortunately break them into small, not intentionally, but they come out in smaller pieces. And when we get the smaller pieces, we're able to carve it into what you see here. The black trays are made of solid crystal, and those are carved. Now, this is the only few I have at the show. All the wood replacement material is going to be at GJX, Peplo show, or at the convention centre at TGMS. The only little bit I have at this show just to show what it is. So some of those are quite large crystals, and they're very new to us. But sometimes also what happens is, if we can go to the middle shelf there, keep going.
Yeah.
In the middle, this one here, in the middle shelf, you can see, if you look closely, some of the plant remnant material. And that plant remnant material has been encapsulated in opal, and it has like a 3D effect. you can see, and it just diffracts the light in a different way, and it's just amazing. Again, you'll see much more of it over at the other shows. And that's the only piece I have here as a display.
Awesome.
Okay. Well, we'll stand. Come back, Sam.
Okay.
Come back.
We can wait.
I can get this
We've got to
right.
get the sun.
So the light's on you.
So, just before you start, if you can sort of stand back a little bit and see the action happen, and then zoom in on whatever comes our way.
Hopefully something comes out.
Righto. Okay. Now, everyone ready?
We're just going to tap it.
I'll give it a little talk first.
Okay.
Okay. So today we're going to do a split, and for the first time in probably 65 million years, give or take, the little bit of opal in here is going to see the sun. It's never seen the sun ever. And this is a process that we go through every time we break a boulder down to make the beautiful gemstones you see inside. So it has to be done correctly, otherwise you're going to do damage. Not every one of them work out perfect, but and only probably 20-30% we do like this, because it has to have a natural fracture. If you're going to do this on every piece of opal, you're going to do damage. So we have selected what we're thinking are pieces that will split easier than doing damage. Sam?
Let's have a go. This has already got a natural split in it, so we're just going to tap it, and hopefully she'll separate by the time the cord. So she's already separated on itself. Didn't take much effort to do it. And that's what's inside.
Awesome.
And we don't do it on every stone. It has to have a natural split.